Stuart, hello.
James.
Good to see you. Thanks for agreeing to do this. Come in, have a chat, share some of your experiences with a bit of a wider audience. So, for those that don't know you, the uninitiated, could you give a brief synopsis of who you are and a bit of your background?
Of course. So I'm Stuart Bullock, 35 years in the tech consulting industry, latterly CEO of high growth tech consultancy, which we grew from hundreds of people to thousands of people over a number of years. Now I do CEO advisory consulting on a portfolio basis, so advise tech consultancy CEOs and founders going through the similar sort of high growth pains and trials and tribulations, and advise them on a portfolio basis, which is quite good fun, and every day is a school day.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so look, we've known each other for quite a while, but again, for people who don't know, could you give a bit of an insight into how you became kind of the CEO of your previous business, that journey?
Yeah, good question. So never aspired to be a CEO or the CEO of that company either. And I think sometimes these things are situational. And I guess I've always been the type of person that is interested in doing my job really well, and kind of putting myself out there. If there were opportunities to get stuck into doing something new and challenging, I would always put my hand up and get stuck into that. And I guess the progressions I've had in my career have usually been through demonstrating capability in doing something kind of really well.
Yeah.
And I guess you end up in a CEO role perhaps because you're a facilitator and an organizer and perhaps a bit of a people person, but quite focused on an outcome, I suppose, and probably good at working with others, I think.
Yeah.
So yes, it was never a career aspiration of mine. I ended up in a position where somebody said, would you do that? I thought, actually, do you know what? Yeah, that'll be interesting. Yeah. And then when I asked what it means to be CEO, they quite honestly said they weren't sure really what it was. so then you have to work that out, don't you? Find ways through.
That's interesting. And I suppose that brings something into my mind. So when you took the role, you said, what does it mean?
Yeah.
and they couldn't really answer it. How could you then kind of define what success was going to be in that role?
Well, funny, because the reason they said not sure about that is because they'd done the role the way they felt they needed to do the role for that company at the time. Yeah. Obviously, the company had moved on. It was a bigger company offering more services with different challenges, and they wanted me to find my way to do the things that worked for me and the company at the time. Yeah. So actually, one of the ways, obviously, the nice thing that particular individual did was said, look, I'm always here to support you. So that was useful. When you're doing a role like a CEO, it's quite a lonely role. Yeah. And I think you need somebody to go to talk to and kind of give you advice and have that counselling kind of session. So they were always there to support me. But also, I had external mentoring and support, which kind of helped me, and I could frame the question to somebody that perhaps wasn't in the organisation that would allow me to say, well, these are my opportunities. Yeah. What I needed to do on improvement, and they would ask me questions and not solve the problem for me, but say these are the sort of things that you need to be looking at. And I think you find your way, and then obviously it's important that a company you work for, you understand the ethos and the goals and the values of the business and what basis decisions are made. And I'd been in that company for some time, so I understood that, and I knew I had a strong team around me that I could work with to say, okay, this is where we are now, and collectively we're a new leadership team, in other words, and we need to find our way forwards. But we had that common ethos and that kind of goal on which decisions were made. I think that's really important. So a strong culture, I guess, is probably where I'm going with that. And then you can build on that, can't you? Yeah,
and that's interesting, the strong cultural kind of piece, I think. And so a few things triggered in my mind then as well. So, so my first foray into like an MD role in a much smaller business, but was in some ways kind of similar, where I got a bit of a tap on the shoulder saying, we're leaving, the owners, we're leaving. It wasn't would you like, you are going to be the succession for the current MD. And that step into like the kind of loneliness was quite an interesting thing. Having been part of a team previously, a team of directors, and then you are the person.
And how did you cope with that step then?
Badly. It was an interesting one. I've chatted about this a couple of times, but I think, say, we were in a process of being bought out. So the old owners were leaving. There was a new owner coming in. That company was much bigger. We were a kind of £40 million turnover business at sale. The company coming in to buy us was £1 billion turnover company with a private owner. So there was challenges from going into a much bigger organisation, different structure, actually into a true kind of board structure for the first time.
Cool. Yeah.
Haven't done an MD role previously as well. Getting promoted above peers, some of which might not like that as well. So I went to external support actually, and that's when I came into coaching for the first time, because I wasn't really sure where to turn to.
I think that support thing is really important, isn't it? I mean, I was lucky I had a supportive now chairman and owners of that company, which were very supportive, but also the leadership team around me that was going to be my leadership team, however that was formed, also very supportive. So I think, and I guess an awareness that things are going to change, to obviously however I wanted to do things. But it is a team game, that leading a company, even though the role itself is lonely. If you can build a strong team around you that are supportive, I think that makes a massive difference.
Yeah, I agree with you very much. And I think, again, reflecting on it now, it triggers everything when you're having these kind of conversations. I think reflecting on it, I probably was too much of a lone wolf to start with. And I don't know whether that was a trust issue, but I think that I've tried to do too much myself. I talked about this recently on something else, about actually wanting to be a bit of the fountain of knowledge, and like when everybody was coming to you with the problems, I wanted to be the person solving it. And maybe that was my ego.
And maybe that's because you, like me, ended up in the position without aspiring to it. So there hadn't been that years of preparation in your mind of what you think it's going to be. When it appears on you, it's quite sudden. It's like, okay, well, I haven't really prepared myself for this, or investigated what it was going to be like. Somebody asked me to write a CV recently, and I've typically not done that. Just you find, I guess, opportunities through networks. You've got LinkedIn's very powerful nowadays. The information's available. And I wrote that and had a conversation. They said, "Oh, you're very," I can't remember the phrase they used, but they said, "You don't push yourself or sell yourself very hard." And I guess I feel that to be a successful CEO, you have to have successful and good people around you. So it's never, the company's not successful because of you, it's because of you and the people around it. So it's always a team thing. It's always a we, not me or I did this thing. You're a bit of a facilitator. You make things happen. You have an eye on a goal, and there's a strategy and a plan and things, and you build mechanisms around how to do that. But actually, it's not you that ultimately is doing the work that's paying the bills. You're directing a ship, so it's very much a team thing, I think.
No, it's really interesting listening to you say that, and I truly believe that as well. And I think it's an interesting one, especially in smaller businesses, that people perhaps misunderstand or just come into it a little bit naively sometimes, and don't have that kind of leadership type role from the start, where it's actually kind of facilitating, working with people, enabling people to grow, and they end up in an individual contributor kind of role. And often businesses get stuck a little bit in the smaller, when smaller businesses kind of get stuck in that phase. It's interesting.
Because if you were a founder, you started a firm, kind of like you and your colleagues have, you understand that basically the buck stops there, and it's everything. And when it's small, you have to do everything, and as you grow, you're peeling away layers of the onion and handing out responsibility for things. But if you come into the CEO role when you're not a founder, then it's you're coming in sideways and trying to get your head around all that. I think with an existing team of people that are already doing a lot of those things in a way that probably was shaped by someone else. And your approach and style will be different. So
100%.
There's a bump to get over. To get
there. So in your role as CEO, before we come on to now, What kept you up at night? What was...
Funny. Okay, I guess the answer to this question is usually nuanced by the organisation you're in a bit, I think. So the organisation I was in was very, very strong technically. So its delivery side of the business was very, very strong.
Yeah.
Always been historically strong. So what kept me awake at night was and it's often the same answer that I get now, was sales.
Yeah.
Winning new work.
Yeah.
I mean, you have new work for the business, because the business, obviously you want to grow the business. To be a CEO successful, you want to grow the business. And sales, it turns out it's hard.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
So winning new work, making sure that the right sort of work is coming in, so that keeps people in that organisation happy.
Yeah.
And obviously to grow, you need to sell new things and take new services to market. So the thing that kept me awake at night most was definitely sales. I hear a lot of people talk about people, but I think the nuance of that organisation is it had very strong people. And so actually what I had was a very strong, capable team of people, multiple teams of people, that I knew with the right direction would do a fantastic job. So actually the thing to worry about was, how can I bring new work into the business to feed the engine, if you will.
Yeah.
So number one problem.
Okay.
Of many, but that's probably, if I had to pick one off, that'd be the top one.
Interesting. And I think, having worked in the recruitment industry, which is very kind of sales driven for most of my life, I'd wholeheartedly agree with that. I think even, if you look at teams of people we've worked with in businesses that I've run previously, the people who are good at sales, a lot harder. They're just a little bit rarer to find. And actually, if you have a really strong sales capability, you can usually build the rest. I mean, clearly you need to deliver, and if you're not delivering, then you're losing customers left, right, and centre as well. So, which is a problem as well. So there is a full ecosystem around it. And you mentioned that your previous business were really strong on the delivery side. So then if you win the work, you probably keep a customer for a long time, I'd imagine. Yeah,
and I think that's part of becoming a CEO. Hadn't realised how much of a salesperson you become. And I guess to become CEO, you need to be good at that anyway, because you do need to be customer facing. And I think one of the fallacies of an MD is that it's a very much internal organisation, and everybody else does all the work thing is wrong. I think you have to be very customer facing. You've got to be in front of your customers regularly, so you understand the problems they're facing, understand the services that you're delivering and how well you're doing that. So I think you can only do that by regular customer contact.
Yeah.
So I think an MD, CEO kind of role is very customer facing, and you're very hooked into the sales cycle. And often you'll be part of the sales cycle. I think people want to see who's leading the business, if they're going to invest in services significantly from that kind of business. So I think you have a part to play.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what you mentioned it briefly in a comment a few seconds ago, but what do you think? So now that you're an advisor to other CEOs and you're out there in the wider world helping other people, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing other CEOs and kind of business owners facing at the moment?
Yeah, good question. I guess leads on to a bit of the market right now as well, doesn't it? So it's the technology market certainly had a boom period a few years ago. We hit, let's face it, we hit COVID. Nobody knew that was coming along. That hit us. It left. But in the technology space, companies still use technology as a differentiator. So there was still a lot of technology work. If anything, that accelerated it, because people were sat at home. Like, how do I differentiate myself in the market? How do I deliver services? How do I sell things? How do I serve citizens or patients, whatever then? So technology was the way. So there was a massive boom, and there was lots of technology work. So actually, as a technology consultancy, it accelerated our place in the market. So at that particular moment in time, you, as a CEO, you're faced with, how do I satisfy demand? How do I grow? How do I scale? How do I maintain quality? Then you can post that now in the last couple of years with probably largely impacted by the economy. And perhaps let's not get into the political situation, but let's say a lack of confidence in the economy, shall we say, And businesses aren't spending money on technology as much as they were a couple of years ago. So the market's tightened up and it's gone a bit quieter. So all of a sudden, as a CEO, you're faced with, back to the sales thing again, how do I sell my services and make sure I compete in the market so I create enough demand for the business? So that's number one question. But then secondly, people that want advice from someone like me are going through some kind of change in the business. So either they're growing and they're a CEO or a founder that are doing the best and have grown beyond something they've done before by definition, and therefore are open to advice. So it could be a people question. So I've grown, it's slightly frustrating. I'm 100 people, 200 people, 300 people, 400 people. Things are happening in my business which I find frustrating. Or in doing that, I've had to grow and shape a leadership team. How do I do that? Very regular question. How do I shape that leadership team? Do I hire in skills? Can I grow my people internally? And either way, when I have a leadership team, how do I make sure that leadership team is high performing? It's difficult to build that leadership team and get that leadership team to do things the way you want it to do and get people to behave what it is. I think people either come to leadership as in, I'm desperate to become a leader and I want to push my career in that way. Or like us, they're kind of unintentional leaders and just through capability of the opportunity to do it. But in either case, you need to shape that leadership team and build a culture and a way of doing things and shape them so that they can perform well.
Yeah. Oh, and it's really interesting listening to that. What, in your opinion, does a good leadership team kind of look like?
Oh. The question, what's a good leadership? I've no idea, to be honest. But I guess what makes good leadership, I suppose, you need a cohesive team.
Yeah. A
team of people that will want to get together and will want to work together. A leadership team that it's a jigsaw puzzle, and I think you need all the right pieces to go together. If you've got pieces missing, things will fall through that crack, and the unit won't operate well. I guess all sorts of metaphors then about assemblies and kind of a car or a machine, they're kind of working together. And a leadership team is like that. So you need to have the full picture, all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle work together. And that shape or size will be different depending on the company. But ultimately, it needs to understand what it needs to do to operate. It needs to understand the goals they're trying to achieve. And then it needs to work out a way that it can operate to do that. Harnessing autonomy, yet a team thing. I guess there's a football team analogy kind of thing going on there. Everyone has their part to play, and how do they do that? What do they do and what do they not do? So it's I guess that's the trick. Is to build that and build a culture, an underlying ethos. We mentioned it before. It's around decision making. So on what basis are people making decisions, and when do they need to seek permission, if you will? There's a fine line around all that.
There's loads of interesting bits coming out of that. I think the skills piece is an interesting one, isn't it? I think, personally, I know that I'm not as good at completer finisher type pieces, so I'm better at looking forward, better at the people piece, looking at a strategy. I'm less competent at that completing things, I call it a completer finisher. I'm not, and so I need to surround myself with people like that to kind of complement what I'm doing, if that makes sense. So when I was listening to it, it was a little bit, I was going a bit kind of reflective, going, okay, in our business, what else might we need? But I think, to your point, it's understanding a little bit of your own skills. You need to understand that a little bit, don't you, before you then start bringing in people to kind of complement it, and also where the business is kind of going as well.
Some of that is conscious decisions. Some is unconscious, isn't it? I think you tend to build, people naturally like to have people around them that are like them.
Yes.
That doesn't always create the best team. But equally, it's probably better to think that you need people around you think, actually, do you know what? We have the sum of the whole covered here. As opposed to we're all like-minded. So there needs to be that healthy tension. Somebody that's very goal-oriented, somebody that will put their hands around everyone else. And I'm not sure you need to think about that too much, but ultimately just make sure that the jigsaw puzzle is a whole. Everyone's aiming in the right direction. This is really clear. And some of that is about learning techniques and methods to kind of do those things, and others are just a natural ability, I suppose, some of that. And all leaders are different. And my style is a bit empathetic, so I'm kind of quite people-oriented, but I'm very goal-oriented too, so I have a focus that I'm going towards, and we all have to align around that. Yeah. And I expect people to align around an ethos probably, and more of a culture.
Yeah.
So the strategy is the goal we're going towards, and the culture is on what basis do we make decisions, and when do we veer from that? And having, and everyone's relationship, it's a bit of a, sounds a bit formal, but it's a bit contract oriented.
Yes.
What's that contract of relationships? If I say to you, I'm going to do X, and you say by when, and I'd say by when. So I've said I'm going to do that thing by that day.
Yeah.
So you would expect me to do that by that day.
Yes.
And when we come back together, we'd expect to have a conversation, which is, if we haven't talked about it between now and then, there will be a completion of something, and we'll talk about that. If I was struggling with that, you would expect me to come back to you when I'm struggling and saying, I said I was going to do that thing, but I'm struggling for this reason. So that's how I like people to behave. So it's quite cohesive, and this team will work together. Yeah,
again, I think there's some really interesting points in there. The piece of doing what you say you're going to do, is something that I take as an absolute given. But I find that a lot of people don't do in business.
Yeah, and maybe that's a trust thing.
Yeah,
because I think if I trusted you in that situation, you trusted me, then when I'm struggling, I knew I could speak to you and say, I'm struggling with this thing, and I know you're not just going to beat me with a stick.
Yes.
You're going to go, why are you struggling with that? And we'll find a way through it.
Yeah.
So I think if everyone in that situation has that level of trust, then there's not going to be a problem with picking your hands up and saying I'm struggling, because we're all human beings, and I think we're all probably, if we're successful, we're all going into areas that we're not used to or comfortable going into, and that's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. So we're ambitious, we're pushing ourselves, and be able to trust one another and put your hand up and say, I just need a bit of help with this. And I think that team game is really important. So I think the trust and, I guess safety.
Yeah.
To be able to have those conversations is important.
The safety one's really interesting, actually. And it's talked about like psychological safety or whatever, but just, being safe to actually say how you feel, say that you're struggling, actually have honest conversations with people is I think, very important. And it's talked about a lot more so now.
Yeah.
But I think definitely as I was kind of growing up into these kind of roles, it was never talked about. Yeah. And there were definitely times that I didn't feel safe enough to say, look, I'm struggling with this. And that kind of pinged me back to something you mentioned a few minutes ago around the decision-making process.
Yeah.
Which I find quite interesting. It's something that recently we've been chatting with the owners here at Exalto, but on decision making and also kind of appetite to risk in your decision making. Yeah. I'd just be interested to get a little bit more detail on like how you would approach that with a team of leaders in your current role about putting a framework or just how you go about it.
So I think either in me operating as a CEO or advising other CEOs, I think it's important. So you have to sort of step back a little bit to be successful in some of the day-to-day things.
Yeah,
you need some other things in place. So part of that is having a plan or a strategy for the business, and there's some, it's well documented, all these type of things. But just having a clear goal and a vision to where you go in, and in the simplest form, in the year you're in, having a plan. There'll be a financial plan. Everyone will have one of those. But on top of that, there'll be a strategy too, and that sounds complicated, but it doesn't have to be. I think it should be really simple. You should be able to communicate that in a very small number of words. Yeah. This is what the company stands for. This is how we sell. This is how we make money. This is what we intend to do this year. This is our plan. Because if you have that, then you can do the next bit. And the next bit is to be able to work with the leadership saying, okay, to be successful in that plan, we need to do these things.
Yeah.
There are some things that we're not doing now, or things we have to do, or things we have to do better at, or things with some projects we need to start and finish. So you can build a plan around those, but you have to have those in place. Once you've got those simple things in place, the sort of building blocks of a plan for the business for that year in its simplest form, then the rest comes into place. So having the culture and kind of things, the decision-making process. So culture in that is so important. How do you, as a leader in this business, what is it you're going to do? And then when you're faced with problems, what decisions you make? So if you've got the goal and you know what you're going towards and you know what we stand for as a business, the decision-making process is a lot easier. And I had a conversation with someone just this morning about process. I think as you scale and as you grow a business, you perhaps need more process.
Yeah.
But that's a scary thing, because once you write something down in a process, people will follow the process.
Yeah.
So, and that leads to unintended consequences, because you can't write down the entire decision tree of running a business. It's impossible. So some people get to a point or make a decision based on the process you wrote down, but it's wrong, because you need to understand the goal and strategy and have the ethos and things around that. And when you get to a point where you think, okay, I'm not sure about this, what do you do? And if you have a strong culture and an understanding of how we think, you'll know what to do instinctively, because it's like, okay, I don't know how to do it, but you will ask someone.
Yes.
Or you will know what to do because you understand the goal, where we're going to, and what we all agree is the right thing to do. So I think you need the mechanistic stuff. And that's part of what I do now, is help people make sure they have one of those things in place. And that looks different in different businesses. But I guess the thing I try to advise people is that can be quite simple.
Yeah.
It's not hard to build one of those. You can do that quite quickly. But once you have something which gives you that strategy, the overall thing, not just the financial plan, but the thing about the business itself, then the culture thing comes into play. Because as long as you have that strong culture, that helps you make the decisions. Because you'll never be able to processize everything. And if you do, the danger in that is people will simply follow the process.
Yeah. It's really interesting listening to that. So I think we've done some similar things to that. There's probably some work to be done in some areas, but interestingly, one of the things that we put in was like a decision-making framework around if there's a tough decision to make, what do you come back to? Yeah. And ours was based on the values around service. Perfect. So the question you ask yourself is, how do you leave a customer as a promoter of your business?
Yeah.
So if there's a decision to be made, okay, how are we leaving the customer or the candidate or coach, whoever, as a promoter of your business?
Yeah.
And the idea is to enable you to make a decision that's the right one, rather than for a short-term goal or for something like that. So, and it's just putting things in that, and a bit like you said, I like I like simple things.
Yeah.
So it just in my life, I like simple things. I like simple answers to slightly complex problems. Like a few years ago, I was trying to lose some weight. I'm terrible at counting calories, all this kind of stuff. So I dropped to intermittent fasting, because it was, I just eat my food between these hours, nothing else, and that's just what I do now.
Yeah.
And it worked for me. So I like a simple thing. So I like the fact that you said something nice and simple that helps you just keep to where you're going with it. Yeah,
and the thing you picked out there, which will probably be good for any business, is you're putting the customer at the middle of everything that you did. And Exalto has that customer feedback is critical for you. So it means everybody in your company, if they're going to make a decision about something, they'll look at that customer, be it a candidate or a client, whatever. But you're going to put them at the front, say how will they feel about this when I made that decision. So that makes it a lot easier to make the decision, because that's the primary basis.
And that was kind of the idea. And again, I think I've had this in well, you learn the hard way, don't you? Right. So yes, so I've learned in previous businesses and stuff that that the culture and the values running through it sometimes aren't aligned across different people in your teams. And it sounds like in your previous business you had like a really good strong team where everything was kind of aligned, but when I've had mismatches in the past and tried to re-engineer stuff, if I've come into the role a bit later, I've tried to re-engineer things. It's been very tricky to get that change piece through.
And don't underestimate the difference. I think so. Whilst I said a strong culture and strong people, doesn't mean we don't all think differently.
Yeah.
Which in fact we do. And that's healthy. And it's the one. And the bigger you grow, the more geographic locations you work in, people do think differently. It's just different, and that's okay. So you have to be aware of that, work with that, and know that is just the situation. And you shouldn't expect everyone in a leadership team or in your business to all think the same way, because they won't. And allow that to flourish. Allow cultures to build and to flourish. I mean, one of the things we did, we were in multiple geographies, and we found that even just in different cities in the UK, people like to build a slightly different culture.
Yeah.
Maybe the newness of the office, or generally the average age of the office, or just its geographic location. So actually there's different, the culture that particular group of people wanted to create was different. the underpinning values and the ethos was the same, but the feel would be different.
Yeah,
but the decision-making things has to be fundamentally the same if you're dealing with the same clients.
And I think that was the thing as well. I think it's interesting, isn't it? So I think maybe I slightly articulated it in the wrong way. I think I felt that it was probably more values actually that were misaligned. But again, that's
I agree.
Yeah,
that's a problem. Yeah.
Flipping it slightly, problems. There's always problems in business, as you say. So what problems do you find? So in your role now, so you're going out working with lots of different CEOs, different businesses. Are there any reoccurring kind of problems that are coming up?
I guess everything we've discussed so far.
Yeah.
I think people search for perfection and they want to think they've got a perfect team and a perfect business, perfect USP over the clients. It turns out the things we do have been done many times over. The good thing is that technology moves on very quickly, AI, etc. And so the way we need to do things now is very different, which is great. And the fast-moving pace of technology means there's things that businesses can take advantage of now that they couldn't before, which provides opportunity for them to come to, which is great. So many of the problems are things we've already talked about, which is about it's about sales, it's about building a team, it's building leadership teams, making sure they're cohesive, doing the right things together, being effective. And every company's at a different stage in its maturity based on the leader, based on how long it's been in business, based on their style, based on the market they're in, based on are they still a founder, sort of management-owned business? Are they partway through a sale? Are they sold? And so they all have different motivations in those businesses. They all have different problems. But so what's the repeated thing? Well, the repeated thing at the moment is going back to the thing that what keeps me awake most of the night, especially in the market right now. It's a difficult market, tech consulting space. So sales is always kind of top thing. So it's not just the sale, then it's how we go to market. You know, what's the USP of the business? Because it's that tech consulting has been done many times over. And what's the core to that? Well, you want to have fantastic people. You want to be able to deliver things quicker, cheaper, better than anyone else. So everyone will say similar things. So you have to package that up in a way that says, I am unique because, but actually accept that your business is always imperfect.
Yeah. Because
you're growing and you go through some things, and there will always be things to tackle. So is it repeating things? Yeah. But is it different everywhere? Yeah, it is as well. And that's a fascinating thing. I think that's the learning thing, which makes it interesting for me in my career, because whilst you are looking at similar things, the exam question is different every day.
Interesting. And you mentioned that, and I think kind of rightly so, it's the same in kind of recruitment as well, that the market's mature, saturated, however you want to put it. What separates then the great kind of consultancies or businesses from the good or not so great?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. What a far-reaching question that is. I guess that's a perspective thing. My perspective, and I think what separates the great is service. Fantastic delivery of service. So a customer buys something.
Yeah.
They especially in technology space, because you're rarely just buying a product.
Yeah.
You're buying expertise, you're buying something that's perhaps nuanced and bespoke for them. And the customer needs to be supported and managed along that process too, because they're not the experts in that. That's why they're the customer and they're buying the service. I think things that separate the great is the companies that are able to understand what the customer wants, to be able to deliver a value to them, so the customer feels that when they spent X amount of money, they've got at least that value back, if not more.
Yeah.
So they're surprised by the positivity of what they've got. And that's been done in a timely manner, so the customers managed and handheld along the way. Because remember, they're running their business, doing their own thing. Yeah. So actually, their primary driver isn't to worry about this problem. So actually, it's the tech company's problem to do that and manage the client and help the client along and advise them when perhaps they're making a bad decision or they're asking something that they don't know is going to be more complicated. So advising them along the way. So I think what separates the great is that ability to manage the client, ability to deliver value at a level that's above what the customer expects.
Yeah.
That's the nub of it. So how they do that, well, that's the interesting thing about this sector, I think, because there's so many different ways. Technology is so powerful now, so many different ways of delivering those services. That's the difference, I think. So the ability, as you talk about with Exalto, is the ability of the technology company delivering that service to really align themselves with the customer, so the customer gets that high quality service.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I was lucky with. The owner of our business years ago was always very much focused on that customer service piece.
Yeah,
it's kind of delighting the customer. Almost. If you can delight a customer, they'll come back to you time and time again.
Yeah, because it's a massive market. There's lots of companies selling technology services of one shape or another. So how do you pick?
Yeah.
And you're petrified when you're buying and spending money that you're not going to get what you want, because not everybody, should we say, is as focused on the outcome as some.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. So when you find someone that can do a good, can deliver, then you keep hold of them.
Yeah.
So back to the thing, what do I lay awake on that with sales? Is okay. Well, if you get a good customer and deliver well for them, the chances are they'll come back to you. So do everything in your power to make sure you look after the customers that you've got, because that's where 80% of your revenue will probably come from.
Interesting. AI. You mentioned it briefly there. Right. How is it impacting the space that you're operating in?
Okay, so I guess you got to step back a bit from AI. Just think about the technology market as a whole. And over the years, there's been lots of new things that's come along. As you get older, you remember lots of those. And at any one time, there's something that's kind of new and really hitting the market and that's making a difference, be it the impact of data on business or blockchain or just new technology or cloud, or there's some things that's come along that's really revolutionized the technology space. And AI is one of those. It's massive. And there are companies investing huge sums of money in the different facets of AI that's enabled the everyday person to generate value from AI. And it's one of those things that will change the technology market hugely. And everybody's working out at the moment how. And I think a lot of the questions, a lot of the conversations are about because they can see, using things like generative AI, they can see ready value from AI in everyday use. You think, so I should be able to, and there's a lot of talk about it, I should be able to use that in my business, either to improve my efficiency or to improve the service to clients or to improve my revenue or something. There's something I should be able to do. And every CIO, CTO worth his salt should be bringing some AI to the table. Yeah. So I think my answer to that is not probably necessarily about AI itself, but it is one of those things that's hitting the technology market that is making a huge difference and a seismic change in the market. So it is changing jobs, it's changing how we do some things. Hopefully generally for the better. So I think if you're a technologist and you're what we might call an engineer, something in that space, building bespoke or enhancing technology in some way, shape or form, you will be making use of some form of AI in your day job. And it will have changed how you do things. Not completely, but in some small way. So what is it? Well, it's huge. It's massive, and it's impacting a lot. But the actual thing about AI itself, it is just another wave. It's another thing, like cloud was, like the internet was, whatever, which is changing how we use technology hugely. We are using it a little bit in the business through a tool, and it's Gen AI, and it does a lot of the customer sentiment piece for us. And it's unbelievable. And we might have needed a person to do that a couple of years ago. And I think, so sometimes it's helping efficiency, as you say, maybe we're not using a person. But you wouldn't leave an AI component to deal with the customer.
No.
You wouldn't, because you're intelligent enough to understand where it fits in. And I think that's where we are now in the technology market, is working together as technology companies and clients to work out the best use of it. To get huge value from, because you can undoubtedly derive huge value. You can see that some companies are using it poorly, and it's when we hit chatbots and all sorts of things that frustrate the wick out of us. Because sometimes we go too far, but it certainly has its place, and I think in conjunction with human beings.
Are you seeing companies buying a lot of AI products from outside then as well? So we're using it. So we've some context into that. I suppose we're using it, a product that was integrated in a product that's an off-the-shelf software as a service type product. I suppose where I'm asking is, are you seeing customers buying consultancies who are using AI to then come in and kind of work with what they've got already?
Yes, I think this is the big positive kind of thing with AI at the moment is people that we're talking to are open to exploring what AI can do. And I think that's the trick. It's like, you have a business in some way, shape or form that does something and has products and services and things. Well, let's explore the breadth of AI, because it's AI itself is moving so fast. So actually, if consultancies understand the breadth of AI, we'll come in, let's have a look at the business, look at where we're doing. Let's have an open mind about where it can add value. And like anything, you can proof of concept thing, trial things, spike things, whatever phrase you want to use, but say, actually, do you know, there are some areas where we think we can get some value from. You don't have to spend a lot of money doing that, because you can proof of concept things quite cheap to test, to probably industrialize and make sure it has the rigor necessary. That's slightly more expensive, but you'll do that when you think, do you know what, there's something here that has value, because I've tried a few things. These few things didn't work very well because actually the way our business is geared up and the data we have or whatever. But these few things, actually, do you know what, we can get value. And then you can have a conversation for a return on investment and the usual business case conversation. Say, actually, do you know what, if we do these things, then this can make positive impact on our customers or the bottom line or efficiency or whatever it is. And then you can implement these projects. So right now, there's a lot of work going on about testing hypotheses and whatever, and some work going on, not as much work, obviously, because you test in the case and some things don't work. Quite a bit of work going on to make use of AI for the benefit of their business or their customers.
Interesting. Slight shift, because we chat about that all day. Going back to the leadership piece, something that's come up in conversations, certainly with people I've been speaking to recently, is a bit of a, I think I'm going to call it a bit of a leadership gap, or probably nurturing people coming through the business as into leadership roles. And a bit of lack of in organisations at the moment. Now, I'm not sure whether this is 100% true, because you only have the kind of echo chamber of the people you speak to, but it's come up in conversations a few times recently. What's your take on that?
Okay, so I guess there's a number of ways to look at all of that, because you've posed that in a rather broad way on purpose. And as a coach, you'll see this. But I guess there's either, depending on the maturity of business, there's either people that come into leadership because they're fascinated by leadership, they're ambitious, and they want to grow their career in that way. That's kind of fine, and that's one route. And there'll be organisations that are geared up to train and coach people and understand the soft skills necessary, as well as the tips and techniques and things that you need to do that job. And then there are people that become accidental leaders because they're in the business and they're adding value, and the value stream is the same. And they have some particular skills that mean they're very good at that business, and people go to them. And both are valid kind of routes through. Both need coaching, training, mentoring kind of through that. And I think typically, probably in the technology space, we've probably been weak on that, probably, I would argue, kind of in general, about investing probably in leaders. I think perhaps bigger, more mature organizations have gotten onto that, probably have ways and training paths to kind of support people. But I think it's a thing that probably not been very good at necessarily. So I think absolutely it's crucial. I think that we train our leaders appropriately. What's the right way to build that leadership team? Is it through nurturing raw talent or hiring it? Well, I guess that's
it's the age-old build or buy. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
But undoubtedly, in sort of the scale of companies that I've been working in, bringing talent through the business is rewarding and can be very successful, providing you put the right support in place for them. Because I think as you nurture raw talent that coming through, by definition, they won't have the skills necessary to do the role that they're stepping into.
And what do you look for in terms of raw talent? So what are the traits that you would look for in an up and coming leader?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's probably quite far-reaching as well. But I guess an alignment of values and kind of ethos is important. The willingness and ability to get stuck in and deal with what faces them. An ownership, I guess, owning problems and challenges and wanting to make everything better, I think. And I guess an ability with living in the grey, if you will.
Yes,
picking up a leadership role, whatever it is, comes with challenges that you can't write on a job specification.
Yes, 100%.
You're joining a team. You want to be a force for good.
Yeah,
and you'll help that particular part of the world be a better place. I think. All those skills, or at least some of those. Part of the recipe, I suppose, for success.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a few things that are kind of springing into my mind while listening to you there. I think one of the things, I presume this happens in the technology world, although I've not spoken to anybody about it as much, but one of the problems that happens in the recruitment world sometimes is that really good individual contributors get promoted into management and leadership roles, and then when the job changes, they're incompetent for want of a better phrase, and there isn't always that support around it. But also sometimes they're not necessarily the right traits that make great leaders, if that makes sense. I presume that probably happens in tech as well.
I guess a couple of things you said there worth going back. One is we are talking a lot about technology because that's kind of the sort of environment that we're in. Having said that, a piece of advice I was given, and I'm realizing now doing the job I do now, multiple companies, is actually the challenges and problems and things we're talking about fit all sorts of industries. It's not just tech. So actually some people I'm advising aren't in technology at all. They're in commercial property, or they're in the NHS kind of, or in medical stuff. And actually, but the conversations are the same. It's about leadership, it's about people, it's about achieving the goals, it's outcomes, it's working together as a team. So that's kind of all the same. Then the thing about sort of an accidental leaders because they're good at a particular thing, I think that's part of the nurturing raw talent, isn't it? If somebody either gets asked to do a kind of senior role, or they want to do a senior role, it's a careful what you wish for, and this is where you need that supportive environment to be able to have a grown-up conversation with someone. Is this role the right for you? You've either expressed a desire to do it, or somebody's asked you to do this role. Are you happy doing that all the time? Are you okay leaving this other thing behind? It's great if you can be in an environment where people can say, I think so, and I'd like to give it a go. And a company hopefully that can allow them support and say, okay, well let's do that thing. But you're not closing off other routes. I think that's important to allow people, if possible, to try some things that they think might be right for them, but then back away from it. I've had a couple of occasions in my career where people have done that, where we've had a grown-up conversation around, not sure this is the right route for you because I think you have some phenomenal skills over here. And 6 months later, those individuals have said, do you know what? I've not enjoyed this as much because for whatever reason, turns out people don't do what you want them to do, or whatever it is. Can I go back to do that other thing? Yes, phenomenal, because actually part of this is just you exploring that yourself and coming to your own conclusion and doing that, and that's a positive thing.
100%. And that's really, I think it's really positive if organisations allow you to do that as well.
Yeah.
I think the other one around that, and we didn't have this in place previously, was having different career paths and routes available. So it was kind of, if you're going to progress your career, at some point you had to do management. Well, some people don't want to, and as you say, aren't necessarily particularly suited to it. But you could be a great individual contributor in whatever your discipline is, but actually having a higher level of career kind of pathway available to that person really helps.
And I think it's a fairly modern world in certainly the technology space now, and people have realised that actually careers aren't all about management routes. In fact, in technology, there's very rewarding careers in pure deep technology kind of routes, and some people are just phenomenal at that, and actually will add way more value doing that than they will in other routes.
100%. I think we're coming towards the end of time.
That's good.
Okay. Good. Well, thanks very much for coming in, Stuart. Really appreciate it. Been fascinating listening to.
Yeah, I think it's funny reflecting on the conversation. You think about things you talked about. I think it's been very interesting talking. Thanks for inviting me. And I think even you learn something from this. I'm learning some stuff from this, and you realise that nobody's perfect. And putting yourself into places, just doing a podcast is a little bit uncomfortable. With a camera and a microphone. And that's how a lot of people feel when they're taking on new, more senior roles in organisations too, and just being aware that it's okay to feel like that. And it's a team game, and people will support you. And I think having that support infrastructure around you is really important. Inside the organisation and outside of it, I think. And that's how I benefited and done what I do now.
I think that's a great way to end it. Somebody once said to me, actually, learn to feel comfortable being uncomfortable.
I like it.
And I think a lot of leadership and running business is spent in that grey area, as you put it.
As it is.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Stuart.
Thanks,
really appreciate it.